Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pursuit of Relentless podcast. You have your host here, Alaina. And today I have Mr. Gary Spencer Smith with me. He is the owner of the Fish and Duck Resort in Port Alberni. I had the experience of being a part of his business on the client side of things. And I got to rent one of his houseboats with my family and have a world-class experience on the water at Sprout Lake. And I don't know, we've just connected since I got back to town, and I was told that he is the guy to talk to. So I'm excited for his story and for you guys to get access to him today. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome. No, thank you for having me. It's always nice to sit down and talk to fellow entrepreneurs and hear people's journeys on both sides. So yeah, it's interesting. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I know that you come from the UK and you were previously in the Navy. So maybe you can give us a little bit of your background and how you started in the business world.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll wind back a bit. I was definitely that ADHD kid, back at school before it was invented. Lots of energy, lots of, just into trouble, but not in a bad way necessarily, just that little mischievous kid. And then when I hit about 18, you leave school at 16 in England, you don't really know what you want to do. And I kind of toyed around with stuff. I knew I wanted things. I didn't come from a background where we had stuff, so we always had to go out and earn it. So
Yeah.
I used to say things to me like, if you want that, I'll pay for half, if I wanted the nice runners or whatever it was. So I started doing, the paper rounds, the routes, but I definitely had an entrepreneurial streak younger because I remember washing like the neighbor's car. And then I went on a little route knocking on doors, being like, can I wash your car? And I had a little route built up. It's about 14 years old. And then I would wash about 10 cars on the weekend. And then I started employing my little sister, paying her $2 for the whole day. She would come with me and let me watch the cars. And I was getting like $5 a car, whatever it was at the time. So that was kind of how I started to have things, and just spending money, I guess, for want of a better word. I never really had that financial education though, to like on the investment side. So that came a lot later. And then at 16, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I tried a bit of college, but it was just, I was bored. And I was walking past the careers office one day and thought, oh, this sounds like an adventure. And I went, and in my mind, I was just doing 4 years and then going to save up enough capital to start some kind of business. Because I had business ideas, but I didn't know how to raise capital. Came on holiday 16 to Sprout Lake and thought, oh, I'd love to live here one day. So that was always like in the back of my head as like a life goal. I then joined the Navy, loved it, did like 11 years in the Navy. I probably would have did my full 22, but I got injured and pensioned out. I served all over the world, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, but I also got 6 months in the Caribbean. I got to the Middle East, Far East. So I saw a lot of the world, which I think that education in itself, I think travel brings a certain level of education and appreciation of outside of the bubble that you've been raised in.
Mm-hmm.
I got pensioned out, injured in the Navy, pensioned out. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm moving to Canada. So I came over, lined up a couple of job interviews, took a job up in Merritt, was working up there doing HVAC for a year. I'd already bought a house on the island on my first trip to Canada. Told my wife, hey, I found a house. And so the idea was I'd rent it out, but with a job lined up, I literally went home and said, okay, we got 4 weeks, I'm moving to Canada. So we all piled the kids and wife and moved across. And while I was working in Merritt, I met a guy that was doing one of those MLMs, just for various things. And I think through that exposure, that opened my eyes to the Rich Dad Poor Dad, and the books that follow that and that process. So in my mind, I'd owned a couple of houses, and looking back, I was always, well, that made sense. If I just kept that, I could have rented it and I'd have been in a better position today. So I did have some hindsight lessons. And then when I came over here, started reading those books through being with that company, I was like, oh, I was on the right track in my head. I just had no one confirming that. So I did a few courses. I worked for a company in town, and then that didn't work out. And I remember a friend of mine saying, why didn't you start your own business? And I was like, yeah, why don't I? Like an actual company. So we started West Coast Slam, which was a leadership and team building company that we did in town. We worked with schools, kids. We did leadership, youth development, but we also worked with a lot of companies. So we went over to the Commerce Bank from Germany and London. We worked with, some of the big companies around Canada, did some leadership development training, did a lot with the First Nations. And from that, my the money we generated, we started to invest in real estate at the same time. So I remember the first property, I did a joint venture partner with my cousin. I'd bought the house as a rental. The rules were different, so it was a lot easier to get into it back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as I brought this joint venture partner in and realized my capital, I was doing math, and I realized I made 333% on my money in 1 year. And I was like, wow, how do I do more of that? Because that makes sense to me. You know, my brain started racking. So again, more education, courses, books, you know, there wasn't as many podcasts out then. There wasn't much. So I delved into that, and we got to the point where we owned about 20 rentals in town, 20 plus rentals, commercial property. And by default, I just started doing the property management and built up a decent sized company like that. Life was going, you know, decent at that level. And then the Fish and Duck, which was my local, I'd actually achieved the dream and managed to get a place on the lake. And then Fish and Duck was the local, and the owner was selling, and I'm doing the math. And I was like, hey, this makes sense. I can actually like live and work at the lake. This is a great opportunity. So we sold the property management company, sold a couple of houses, and then got into this again with a group of partners and shareholders. So we came in as a group and ended up purchasing the Fish and Duck. And that was 2019. So we dealt with COVID 2 years. And then I know people don't like to use the word, but definitely a bit of a recession. So we've had a challenging few years, but we know we're making it through. So it's just a case of what we do in this next phase. Just recently had a trip abroad as well to Bali, and that's opened my eyes to some other opportunities that way. So I'm thinking of potentially looking at something in Bali as well to do on the real estate property investing side. So I don't know if we'll continue here, if we'll move across and start globally somewhere else. So I've always been a hard working person, but not necessarily had the right direction or the right mentorship, I think would be a better word to put that into where it was most useful.
Mm-hmm.
Navy definitely taught me to knuckle down. I did my engineering degree through the Navy, so that, you know, give me a bit of belief in myself that, you know, you can knuckle at something and achieve something good at the end of it. So yeah, just I guess the work ethic that you get within the military, that's definitely applies to as I've moved into business today. So then here we are today. I feel like I'm at another junction where we got to decide what direction we want to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's those big days in your life when you're like, okay, is this actually what I want to do? And for myself, I was a heavy equipment operator living the dream of so many people in Fort McMurray who were like, this is what you need to do for the rest of your life to get wealthy. And I was like, I don't know about you guys, but A, I wasn't getting that wealthy. And B, I was miserable. And I was like, I don't think this is where I belong. Like, I think there's so much more to the world than just sitting behind a steering wheel of a vehicle every single day of my life. And it's like, oh, but then you live for your days off. I'm like, yeah, but what if you could enjoy every day? You know?
I feel like that was always something. It was funny. I did a vision board, I'm guessing 2008, 9, you know, and you paste all your things on it and you do it. And I actually found it about 6 months ago, and I pulled it out, and literally almost everything on that board was achieved. And when I was doing it, it was like hype in the sky type thing. You know, it was like the lake house, the boat, the toys. I mean, I do like things, but it's not so much the actual ownership of the things. It's doing those things with friends. So I like being on a boat with friends. I don't like just driving a boat around by myself. That's boring. Same for like dirt bikes. I like doing it with my friends. It's more about that, the time and the finances to do those things that bring pleasure in your life. And I'll actually allude to something that it's when we're doing real estate coaching and teaching people to invest in that. One of the things I say to people is, what does your perfect day look like? And because we can live, like you said, you know, you're at the steering wheel every day, and sure, you might get to 60 and have money in the bank, but what life have you led?
Yeah.
So one of the things I came up with, and again, through having a mentor and a coach, and we worked on this together, it was like, well, what does your perfect day look like? So for me, I don't want to be getting up at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m., whatever that time is, and rushing out the door and being in that, you know, the traffic, and then working for somebody else so they can have their dream life. And then at 5 o'clock, you know, coming home. And I feel if you live that life, you're always living on a countdown because you're waiting for the weekend. how many people are like, oh, I can't wait till Friday. Well, you just discounted Monday to Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't wait till I go on holiday. And it's this whole, you just always counting down to something. So my perfect day is, I don't want to be rushed out of bed. I like my alarm to go off. I like to lie there for 20 minutes. I like to get up, have a coffee, no phone, no TV, just relax into that day, have a think about it. I would like to, because whatever you do, you're going to work somewhere. So put your time in, 9/11, put the fires out. I want to go out and enjoy a nice lunch with people. I don't want to be tied to where, when, how much, or, those people can't afford that to be able to pay for that without nickel and diming. And then in an afternoon to do a soul filling activity. So for me, that's anything to do with the lakes and mountains, whether that's skiing, hiking, biking, boating, I enjoy that. It makes me feel nourished. Other people might be building a church, but whatever it is, have that time to do it. And then on an evening, I want to eat nice food. I don't want to eat, craft dinner for the rest of my life. So I want to be able to afford quality ingredients, go to nice restaurants, spend quality time with people, friends, have interesting conversations. And then on an evening, spend quality time with my wife and relax. And if you've got a family, your kids, that's the kind of stuff that I feel nourishes someone. And if you get to the end of your life, then you look back and you've had a life of fulfillment and happiness. It doesn't matter what your job was at that point. So I think if you chase that goal, and to me, if I pick the right businesses, that's the day I could live anywhere on the planet. I could be in Barbados, I could be in Whistler, and I can still function. So when I'm trying to do business, I'm thinking of that perfect day in the back of my life. And the more perfect days I can have in a month, then the more fulfilled I feel in my life. So I'm always in pursuit of that.
I love that. That's the pursuit of relentless, right? That's it. That's why I started the podcast. It's finding what really matters to you and living true to what you need to do to make your life happy, because too many people are stuck in a situation that they don't necessarily want to be in, but they're in it and they're stuck in it because then they're in too much debt to leave, or they don't know how to buy that first piece of real estate, or they have the outlook like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to ever buy a home, or I'm not going to be able to even afford groceries, or what do you mean you want me to have 4 children? Like, how am I supposed to afford that? And it's really frustrating because I'm in the financial industry now, and the only reason that I got into the financial industry was because I like to help people. And I'm like, there's too many people out there who aren't focused on doing those things, like living that life that, okay, you can be a hustler and like you can go out and have this amazing, crazy, exciting life. But what dream are you selling? Are you selling the dream of, oh, I have to work 15 hours a day in order to be successful? Like, it's a pretty shitty dream. I'm like, I don't want to have to work 15 hours a day. I want to choose to work when I want to work. And if that's okay, well, this is what's bringing me fulfillment. I love, similar to yourself, I like taking my dog for a walk in the afternoon because it's when I'm like tired and I'm like, do I really want to be trying to be present in a client conversation, like talking about someone's money when I'm like literally half an eye open, falling asleep? No. So instead, I take that time, I'll work in the morning and then I'll work in the evening, but I'll take that time in the afternoon to do my meal prep or take my dog for a walk or do yoga or like take care of myself so that I can re-energize. And I think that's a really
Your soul filling activities.
Yeah. Love
And
it.
I think it's funny because your perfect day as well is going to change in time. If you've got young kids, then it might be spending time with them. My 2 kids are grown up now, but even looking back, I think of the pressures as a younger person, financially and single income and all those things. I think that creates a lot of pressure on relationships. Whereas if you're educated or steered in the right direction and focused on the correct type of goals, then I feel looking back, I wouldn't have had the same pressures then as I would if I was to do that same thing with today's mindset back then. So it's like, if there's a way, and this podcast is great, and there's other things out there too, where if people can educate in the right direction, I think you can alleviate a lot of the societal pressures that get put on us
Yeah.
to behave a certain way. And I feel a lot of it's just to keep you involved in the rat race because, the reason you paid a certain salary is because if they pay you too much, you'll go and do something else. And they need you to come back on Monday morning. So you got to have just enough. So you come back to work in the next week. Otherwise they lose an employee. So
Yeah.
it is kind of trap that we go around and around in. So, and even now, like I think, capital gains tax change. So people who are in real estate now, there's a big extra chunk. I think it's a third extra now that they're paying in taxes just because. So people that have spent the last 20 years building a portfolio just lost a third of that.
Yeah.
Just because of a rule change. And it's a little bit upsetting when you see that kind of stuff happening because people have hustled, done things, and just because of timing and world politics, you get beat on a little bit. So multiple avenues of happiness and multiple avenues of income. If you can create them without you having to trade your time for your money, then that's definitely a way to go if you want to have a filled life and at some point be able to go, you know what? I want to take 6 months off because I know there's a lot of people, they can't afford to stop working for 2-3 months if they get sick. Yeah, or a week. Yeah, a week or a day. And it's scary that society's got to that when I feel we're in a time of abundance and opportunity.
Yes, I believe that as well. But in my industry, it's like, okay, we are paying out more critical illness claims than I have. So in the last 2 years, I've paid out more critical illness claims than I've paid out in the last 9 years in business.
Wow.
I'm like, what's going on? Like, what is happening? But
And is that statistically across the whole, is that just what you've seen from yourself, or is
that's what I've personally seen. But statistically, same thing. Like statistically,
right.
There's been more life insurance claims. There's been more critical illness claims. But the people are just getting sicker because they're not taking care of themselves. And like, I look at my husband's calendar and he works 3 days on, 3 days off. And I can't remember what book I was reading, but it was talking about like the 5 factors that make people die early. And like that job was 4 of 5 of them. It's like working long hours, not getting breaks, working overnight, like messing with your circadian rhythm. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, like what?
What does he do?
He's a heavy equipment operator.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we met. But I was like, I don't see myself doing this forever. He loves it. He loves it. And I'm like, honey, but you could like be in the mountains in BC building roads and, or like, and he's like, yeah, one day, like we had.
That's the difference. If you truly do love the labor that you do, then it doesn't feel like, and it's like that Christmas morning feeling.
Yeah.
If you're excited, it doesn't matter that you went to bed at 2 a.m. Come 6 a.m., you're excited, you pop up like you're going on holiday, you're going, like, you don't even need an alarm clock. You wake up. And I feel if your work, whether that's stacking shelves or, building or whatever that may be, if it makes you feel that way, that you want to get up, then great, because you've already took all that other stress out of what is typically most of your life is work. So if you can eliminate the stress around that, great, good on you.
Exactly. Well, I think it's so important to go back to the vision board conversation and just painting a vision for yourself of what is possible. And I think that people doubt themselves too often when it's actually quite easy to accomplish what you set your mind out to do if you're focused on it. So
I also have a belief on that because mine was, I always wanted to emigrate to Canada and live at the lake. It was always a goal in my head. I'd talk about it. I had, friends in the military. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, going to do that. I wouldn't say I physically took steps until I was injured, but there were lots of things that I look back throughout my career. And I think because that was always present in mind, there were little choices I made, decisions that happened, just random things that happened that I had no control over that all led me to that path. But I think because that was my focal point, that was what was attracted to me, my degree in the military. That wasn't a conscious choice that I was like, oh, I'm going to do a degree and that's going to help me get there. I was actually out in Afghanistan. It was 2001. We were the first ship out there right afterwards. And I remember it was 6 hours on, 6 off, 6 on, 6 off for 3 months straight, not a single day off. You were like a zombie. And they went, hey, do you want to do your engineering degree? And at the time, my ex-wife was pregnant with our first. And I went, oh, what happens there? They went, oh, I'll have to fly you back to do your degree. And I just wanted out of there. I was like, yep, saying, yep, done. Fly me off this ship, get me back home. And I got back, I think, a week or 2 weeks before he was born. So I wasn't even going to be back for the birth based on what was going on in the world. So that wasn't a conscious planned decision. It was just something that was presented. And I think because it was there, that I do believe in that law of attraction. You do attract things around that. So Yes, I made the choice at the time, but that presented to me wasn't something I actively pursued. And I think that was because I always had that goal of Canada, goal of Canada, goal of Canada.
Yeah.
Same with the vision board. There was a lot of it, even though it was a goal, like there wasn't necessarily steps that I took proactively until such something was presented. And then it was like, oh yeah, well, if I do that, I'll get that. So it's, yeah, you will bring in more. And I think that comes as well with the people that you hang around with too.
Yes.
If you're having the conversations about whatever it is on your vision board with the people that are doing it around it, talk about it, you'll get those opportunities presented to you to make the choices that take you towards your goals and dreams or whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah. I love that. So for myself in business, it was like, okay, I'm a heavy equipment operator. And then the plant lit on fire. And they're like, and you're laid off. I'm
Oh,
like, oh, good. Just totally threw me for a loop. And that's when I met my financial firm that I'm a part of now. And I'm like, huh, interesting. I probably would have never, ever tried it if I didn't get laid off and was super desperate to be in better financial shape. And then I started surrounding myself with people that thought bigger and were encouraging me to personally develop, because I was like very shy, very introverted, and just like not focused on the right things. I was focused on making money. And I was like, okay, well, when you focus on making money, you don't make money. When you focus on happiness and giving and contribution, then you tend to make more money and you're happier, which was so weird to me because I was always told that you just have to go and work hard and get a degree and, do the work. And then,
and I don't think job security is a thing. You were taught that path, right? Like,
no,
work hard, get a good education, work for 40 years, you retire happy.
comfortably.
It's like, I looked at the math and I'm like, well, I've been on holiday. And when I went on holiday, I spent 10 times as much as when I was working. So if I want to retire, it didn't make, like, the path I was on wasn't going to allow me to live that life.
Right.
And you see it so often in elderly, I witnessed it with my own grandparents, they were like, oh, I can't have the heating on because of the bills will be too high. And I'm like, but why do you not want to sit comfortably in your house? And
Right.
my goal was to not necessarily get to where I am today, but it was more about creating those perfect days. And I didn't want to be tied to if I want to go skiing on a Wednesday, because that's when the snow is, then I can go on the Wednesday. So I didn't want to be tied to that, counting down the week, Monday to Fridays, and just building my life with things that I like doing. And once I started building a life around the things I like doing, you're right, the other opportunities come along, you're surrounded with different people. It's definitely, and it's funny, as you're on about, you planned how it burned down in the choice, and it's like, you're in a well-paid job. Had that not burned down, that illusion of security is always there. But in the click of a finger, that security disappears.
Yeah.
And until someone goes through that, I think that's when people realize, oh, it wasn't as secure as I thought. Whereas I feel being an entrepreneur, yes, there's struggles, there's challenges, it can be work, but you are in control of what happens. And you can look back and go, I did that wrong. If I don't do that again, I won't make that same mistake. So the next time I'll be in a different position.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gives you real control and accountability, if you're willing to accept that, of your own choices and where they've led to. So,
well, and it wasn't even the first time I got laid off that it really hit me. It was the first time I got laid off that I met World Financial Group. And I was like, okay, well, this is an opportunity that's literally just been like presented to me. And I watched the presentation and was like, how come I didn't learn this stuff in school? Like how to invest money in a tax-free savings account, or like how compound interest worked. And I was like, why aren't we learning this stuff? And like, how come more people don't know this? And how come I'm 26 years old at the time and like have never understood this super simple concept of compound interest? And so it took me getting a license, helping a few families, and then going back to work, and then realizing how much I disliked my work and how dangerous it was, and how I was literally like, oh, okay, I'll give you a fun story, but I was going to die in that job because I was like so unsafe at night when it came to driving. I have bad eyes. I wear glasses. Anyways, I had a guy coming towards me in a haul truck and he was asleep at the wheel. with a fully loaded 800-ton machine. And I'm like honking at him, flashing my lights, and he's asleep, like driving in a straight line, but is on the trajectory to hit me. And I'm like, in that moment, it was, I'm gonna lose my life right now. And why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why, like, just had that crazy moment. And I was like, well, thank God I have life insurance, because I had just bought my first house. I was like, I'm gonna leave my husband with like all of this crazy mortgage debt. And oh, it was the craziest experience of my life. And just went through that and was like, okay, I need to rethink what really matters. And I was like, I'm doing this for the money, and these people don't even care that this is about to happen to me, And so, anyways, fast forward.
And it would have been an accident report, move on, someone replaces you, carry on.
Yeah, next, And then I got laid off again, and I was like, okay, like I'm not supposed to be here, And so I started really taking my business seriously, and I was starting to believe in myself a lot more. I was helping more families, and then I was like, okay, maybe I can do this full time. And so my husband got on directly with one of the big oil sands companies. And so he doubled our income overnight with guaranteed income where they don't lay you off. And he's like, Alaina, I want you to quit your job. I want you to go full time with your business because you clearly love it. And you can go and build us our entrepreneurial dream, because he's such a certainty guy. Like he really loves having the guarantees. And I'm more like, not like that.
Yeah. I'm definitely more like you.
I know you're like ADHD. I'm like, yeah, me too. Because I have a hard time just like sitting still, and I'm like such a visionary, So I'm like, I see this vision of, okay, we bought our first piece of real estate. We kicked butt in our real estate world. And now we're on our third property, which is almost paid off already. And I'm like, this is crazy that we were able to do this. I'm 35 now. And I'm like, okay, if I can do this, you can do this, And so I learned everything in the financial world from doing it all wrong. And now I feel like I can share with other people, like, hey, this is how I got out of it. Or like, here's the situation I was in. You can have some hope, But even people who are doing well, it's like, what strategies are there out there that we can offer to people that they've never even...
I know it's, you're saying there about even doing well. Like I know somebody he owns a business, does really, really well, has a good standard of living, the nice house but he just said, I just feel like I'm stressed and I'm hustling and I don't feel like I'm getting ahead. And he makes good money, and it's just, I think, and you mentioned as well, just to backtrack your compound interest. I think I seen a meme the other day and it was two twins at like 20. Well, yeah, I'm investing this much now from 20. And then she said, well, I'm starting when I'm 30. And she was investing the same. She was, I've stopped inputting when I'm 30. And she goes all the way till she's 60. She'd invested more and it just showed you the difference. And it was like, million to million. It was a lot just with that compounding and that extra 10 years early on. It was insane. I was like, that's the kind of stuff that should be showing to people going into your first job. Because when you start working, especially as a young person, you don't need all of that money. You literally just waste it. So if you could be taught a few lessons like that, hey, no, this is how you do it, you get ahead. But schools are not designed to create someone's lifestyles. They're designed to create a workforce. Yeah. Whether it's always steering you. And I've been guilty of this too. You're like, oh, what job do you want to do when you're older? I remember I was doing something at the high school and none of the jobs, it was about, budgeting on a monthly basis, your bread's this is this, and it was teaching them that. But none of the jobs were like, oh, you're a business owner. Everything was like a job with a budget. None of them was like, you're a business owner.
Good luck. Yeah. Right.
Or you're an entrepreneur. And I feel ADHD type people, we get yourself, you mentioned the shiny, the visionary. And I felt like I was that for a long time, but then it took me a lot of self-development and control to become focused enough to actually dial into that versus being like trying this for a bit. Oh, it's not working, and squirreling. So I definitely had a bit of zigzagging around as I was starting out, and it didn't get where I wanted it to in the time. But instead of knuckling down and being like, okay, this is a realistic time zone. These stories that you hear at somebody, I started a business and I sold it for $3 billion in 6 years. Like that's not realistic. Most people have to think, right, you're going to hustle for 5 years. Yeah. Not every business, but 5 years to establish and get a base where, okay, now I can take my foot off the gas a bit and enjoy life.
Yeah.
And with real estate, it was the same for me. I remember it was just, I felt like I was the same busyness, but then one day what happened? I think I got injured. Yeah, I think it was when I had a hernia. So I physically couldn't do anything for like
Yeah.
5 weeks. And you think the world's going to end, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, it continued. Nothing really got broke. So where was all my time going as I was working, doing exactly what I was doing? And that made me realize how much time we actually do have, how much time we waste trying to be productive. So there's a big difference between true productivity and, because you can probably run most businesses with a few hours if you're smart, have the right team, and you're very productive in those times versus the 8, 9, 10, 15 hours that people tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, busy work is a real thing. And I realized how often I was doing busy work just to feel like I was being productive. And I'm like, okay, what are the things in my business that actually pay me money? Getting on appointments and being on appointments. And that's it, right? Or recruiting, right? Because I'm like, okay, well, I can teach someone else how to then run the business, help them get clients, and then boom, you're making
I
me
can spend 6 hours making a logo look pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you can hire that out for $100, right?
Yeah.
It's so crazy. But I was like, how many hours a day am I checking my emails? Because it like makes me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah, I have all notifications off on my phone except text messages. Everything, nothing beeps, dings. Because if I do, then all of a sudden I'm down a rabbit hole and I've wasted 40 minutes, an hour, and I've watched 10 memes that some friends sent me that they think are funny. So yeah, I've really had to dial in where I was wasting time just so I can maintain that focus to get to be more successful, I guess. So. But it's still a challenge, there's going to be things come along that make you think, okay, is this the right path? And I think if you have the right vision and goal, it makes it a lot easier to ask the question, yes or no. Is this going to help me get closer to my goal? Yes or no. And if it's a no, don't do it. Don't waste your time doing it.
Well, look at your life. So you've manifested everything that you love in life. You get to be on the water. You get to put people in a position where they get to do what you love, which is being on the water, being around friends, having social experiences in nature, and I think about that and I'm like, yeah, isn't that the dream, But then our dreams can also change.
Yeah,
they can change
in time. Yeah, for sure. And that depends, based on health, based on family, based on like all those things kind of change. And one of my, I've always enjoyed traveling. Obviously, I was lucky enough that we would get a holiday. I know I was saying in Europe, but that's like, Mexico. So it was like, I would always go somewhere in the summer, I'd get a week of sunshine. So I got to see different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And then joining the Navy, you got to see global cultures on a huge pattern. And it's always been something I wanted to do. But when I first came to Canada, I felt those first 5, 7 years were like a challenge. I was trying to do a business. I was busy being busy, and I wasn't affording myself the opportunity to go travel, to go do things. Whereas now I make it a point, I'm going to go back to the UK every year, see family and friends. I'm going to go somewhere and have a holiday and experience. It might not be for long, but, this year, I think last year we went to some of the Canary Islands. This year we went to Bali. Like, there are things that I want to do something every year, at least one thing. And then you've got all your little holidays, to friends, to up around Canada. And Canada is such a beautiful spot. You don't actually need to go abroad. So when I first got here, it's like, what are you doing in the summer? I'm going to the lake. Then it's like my sister came out this last year, I think it was. She's been out a few times, and she's like, look, you know what? I don't want to do anything. Like, just sitting on your dock, reading a book. Like, that is my holiday. That's just you are living my holiday.
Yeah. I moved here last year from Fort McMurray. I'm originally from Bell River. Okay. And I've got a bunch of my friends. So I spent 13 years in Fort McMurray. And I've built a pretty good social media following and stuff. And I have lots of friends and acquaintances. And they're like, Alaina, we're going to unfollow you because your life looks just too amazing. And I'm like, or you could come visit, because I don't know. I'm like, I feel like when you just follow your heart and do what you're supposed to do, then you create the life of your dreams. And it gives you those opportunities. Like, I don't know, just going, like you said, to Bali. I'm like, we're going on our first cruise. And it's so funny because it's a business trip, but at the same time, it's crossing off 3 of our bucket list places like Turks and Caicos and Bahamas and Dominican. And so I'm like, we get to go to 3 of the places that are on our bucket list, and yet it's all in 1 week. And who knew that was even possible, you know? And before it was like so out there, like, oh my goodness, we're going to go to the Bahamas. And now I'm like, yeah, that's just happening, you know, like it's so crazy how your mindset can shift from like, oh, that's a pipe dream to, okay, no, this is our actual life that we're building and creating because of our intention.
And I think one of the things you're saying there, you're hitting those three bucket lists, but it's amazing how when you get to whatever level that is, that becomes your new normal.
Yeah.
And taking that time to actually appreciate that. And I had a moment of realization, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even a bit more. It was after we bought the fishing duck. And we were, I got a radio call, hot tub's not working. So I'm like flustered. I jump in a boat. I'm going out, see what's going on. I'm driving along on the lake in a boat. It's 30 degrees and I'm stressed. And then I took a breath and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you drive in a boat, you're literally driving to someone who's partying on a houseboat with their friends to fix their hot tub that's, probably something simple because there's nothing complicated on them. And you're stressed. I'm like, Gary, you're not in Afghanistan. Just enjoy this moment. And I was like, oh yeah, actually my work is driving in a speedboat in the sunshine with my top off, probably to go to a boat full of, women in bikinis to fix the hot tub because one of them didn't know how to, they didn't listen on the orientation. So it was like that. And I took a breath, slowed down. I'm like, actually, you know what? Life is good. So I think even as you progress, you might not realize where you are because your new normal is always going with you. So I think it's taking that time to just reflect on what you've got to and have an appreciation. And I think appreciation and gratitude go way further for happiness as well than chasing, which I felt I did for so many years. And now I have an appreciation and gratitude for just life in general. The other day, sitting outside, just looking at the trees and the water, and I was like, wow, this is like a beautiful spot. Mm-hmm. And I don't tend to do that in the daily grind. You're like, oh, your brain's ahead of the present. So I think it's always being mindful to come back to present and give gratitude and appreciation. So I actually have a gratitude list on my phone. So I'm feeling stressed, I just pull up my phone and I just start reading down my gratitude list. And it's amazing how unstressed you can become because you can't be grateful and stressed at the same time. They just don't coexist.
Exactly.
And I might be peed off while I'm reading down, but by the time 20 or 30, I'm like, actually life's pretty good. Yeah, you got to accept it.
I do this experiment with my team and I'm like, okay, guys, I want you to think about like the 3 top things that you're grateful for right now. And they're just, of course, like in those moments that I ask them to do this, they're like super frustrated or they're like, nothing's going my way. And they're just complaining to me. And I'm like, okay, so what's going good? And then they like pause and they're like, oh, like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to sit here until you think about 3 things that are going good. And then we're going to talk about the good things. Because if you just sit there and you focus on the things that are going wrong, you're going to continue to focus on the things that are going wrong unless you snap yourself out of it.
Where focus goes, energy flows.
Yes. So
I think that's a Tony Robbins saying, his business mastery had. And it's like, if you can change your state and your energy, you're going to think differently. And we've had it here. We've had some challenges this year. And I was, I literally came back from a holiday. My wife had been in hospital in the UK. We had that to deal with. We had, just recently just put my dog down. I landed here. I had a lot of stuff going on with the business. And it was a compounding, and I was spiraling just in myself. And I was like, okay, I need to just stop. And so I just took, half a day, did a bit of reflection, did a bit of actual changing my thoughts, changing my energy state. And then now I'm actually looking at, okay, well, this is how I solve this. This is how I solve that. This is how I solve that. So now my whole outlook has changed and I feel a lot better and I'm not as stressed. I mean, it's still things, the challenges are there, but I feel differently about them and you approach them differently then. If you get in an argument with your spouse and you're already irritated because you've had a crappy day at work, that becomes a bickering argument. But if you spend 2 minutes outside, just even walking for 5 minutes and just you walk in, now you'll be less snappy at those same points, if that makes sense, because you're in a different state. So I think that's an important thing. You do your walk, you're saying in the afternoons, and that is a great thing to do. I don't know why companies don't do this with their staff. They're like, you know what, everyone up out the chairs, let's go and walk 5 minutes around the block and go and have a little bullshit about what's going on. Because I guarantee when they go back in that office, they'll be 10 times more productive than if you try to flog the horse from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's 5 minutes. That's all it takes. So
no, and it just brings you so much joy when you're able to like have those minutes where even in work, it's like, okay, well, I have work to do, but I also have to take care of myself. I have to take care of my health because guess what? If you don't have health, you don't have anything.
yeah,
Right. So it's like super frustrating when you're looking at, especially in my industry. Oh my goodness. I just had a 35-year-old client pass away and I'm like, oh, he's younger than me. Like just looking at the situation and I'm like, I don't want to be that person who is going to have those regrets on my deathbed, you know? And that's one of the reasons I moved back to BC because I'm like, there's so much opportunity here. And the opportunity is I don't have to miss my niece and nephew's birthdays anymore. Right? I can be a part of my family again. I've been gone for so long and I just look at the things that I value most and I'm like, family's in one of those top things that I value. I'm like, but am I actually living that? You know, am I living that life saying, hey, I value my family, but I'm actually working all the time and I'm not spending enough time with my husband or I never see my dog or, you know, and I'm just like now at least literally sleeping on my feet right now. My little Rottweiler. She's sleeping at my feet under my desk right now.
I think that's a big thing to have as well. Just those goals and dreams, but a values conversation and really understanding what your values are.
Yeah.
The way you allocate the time. Because again, it makes choices easier. If you understand your values, your core values and what you want to do around that and your willingness or unwillingness to do something depending on what your value basis might be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also from relationship, even with staff, like when we employ now, we go up to the ski resorts and we recruit the Aussies and we get all those guys down here. The seasons link, it just works really well. But it's one of the conversations I have with all the staff. I'm like, okay, what are your values in life? You know, if someone's just, oh, I'm just money, blah, 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 you know, I'm like, okay, you're probably not going to fit into our team.
Yeah.
The team we have, it's great. Like they all spend time together. They do trips together. And it really does make it feel like a little bit of a family here, you know, and they all go off at the end of the season, but we've had return, you know, every year of their permit, they've come back here because they enjoyed being here and part of that core group. And I think that's because their values all align. So when they would show up, they're into the same kind of stuff. And I don't mean just, you know, going out on the water, but, oh, I like being in nature. I like to take those times. So they're here and and we have so many nice hikes, so many beautiful spots to go to. So even in their days off, they're doing stuff together outside of work because they're now friends because they share the same values. So
Yeah.
that's been really nice to see that materialize. You know, to have from concept in my head to seeing it materialize the last 2 years has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely been something I feel good about putting together.
You know what I do with my team is I recognize on the core values of my team. So like one of my core values on my team is inspiring action through education. So this week, I'm super excited. I get to go to INEO and I'm teaching a group of 16 to 20-year-olds about money.
Yeah.
And I'm just like so pumped that I get that opportunity just to go out and like fill my cup because I'm like, I love teaching, you know, I love playing games with kids. I think it's fun.
I did a lot of work with that group too, like and the 16 to 20-year-olds. So when I had the leadership company, we worked a lot with INEO and the youth at risk, and you know, and I feel like that age, like that 16 to 20, is a super influential. And it might not have an impact right then, but and this is what I used to say about the leadership stuff. I'm like, if you can teach them something that maybe 10 years down the line, that little lesson has the pebble effect. You know, it works there, and they pass that on, and you have no idea how far that ripple goes. So yeah, I think passing on, you know, beneficial knowledge. Let's just say not just knowledge, because it's not all beneficial, but beneficial knowledge that can have a positive impact is a very, you know, rewarding thing, I think, for anyone to do. So yeah, props to you for doing that.
I'm excited. I'm like, what do you want me to teach about? She's like, I don't know, you do whatever you want. Yay, that'll be fun.
Yeah, no, I liked working with those groups. They're always fun, and we play some crazy games with them. But it was nice to see that change and that flip and the understanding of that. So yeah,
we're gonna play Financial Jeopardy.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
I built a Financial Jeopardy game, and it's literally just like the things that I wish I knew. And then I just bought a bunch of candy for prizes because why not?
Yeah.
because we're going to have some fun. But
Nice. Nice.
yeah,
That sounds like a great day.
I think it'll be fun. Anyways, yeah, closing off, I would love for you to talk about like getting into the real estate world and how people, especially in today's world, could go about building the life that they want to live and having a home that they love and potentially investing in multiple pieces of real estate because it is a lucrative industry if you're in the right region. Don't be 100% in one area. That's a challenge because then you're adding in environmental factors and tourism and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm from Fort McMurray, and a lot of people are like, I would have never purchased up there. And I'm like, well, that's because you're 100% invested in oil and gas. Like think about that because you're buying real estate in an oil and gas town, so even more diversified. But anyways, if you could talk about the real estate space as well, I'd really appreciate
it. I think anyone, even if you're just going to become a homeowner, I think the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, it's such an easy read. The concept of just finances around that is, a definite move forward. I think because we're taught by historical, moving forward, you're like, our parents, our grandparents are like, oh no, you save up, you put a down payment on a house, you live in it, you pay your mortgage. And I think there is so many other avenues for people to generate a home and create a life from real estate. And one of the things I'll speak, especially if they're younger, the early 20s to, late 20s, and they're like, oh, I'm buying my first house. I'm like, okay, do you have kids? And you're like, no. I'm like, right. Then if you're buying a house with a suite, don't live upstairs. Rent the upstairs and live in the suite. And now you're probably living rent free. Like compound that right now before, and then when you have kids, then do the flip. But on like little things like the house hacking, and you can look up a lot of videos as YouTube. There's a million things that discuss what this is, how to do it. I know people have Airbnb one of their rooms, and I know people go, I don't want someone in my house, but there are ways to protect yourself against that. You can Airbnb a room and just build a security door in your hallway and you protect it. They're not coming through. A lot of people, they don't want someone in the space, but there'll be a couple that live in a 3-bedroom house, 2,000 square foot. And, their parents are going, I had a house like this, so you should have a house like that. It's like, well, does that really support your values of your life? And hey, if it does, and you want 3 rooms that you want to decorate every 5 years, that's where you want to put your money, great. But for most people, it's not. And it's typically one of their biggest expenses. And I think if you always look at it about how can I make some money off this space that I have, whether it's, I know Airbnb depend on locations, areas and stuff, but I still believe it's your own house you're allowed to Airbnb it. And then as you generate equity, because that comes with time, don't just refinance your house to pay off your truck, pay off your credit cards, pay off your, that's, look at a way, and I know the Smith maneuver, I'm sure you're well aware of that. That's again, something else people can Google. Look at doing something like the Smith maneuver so you can reinvest and start to compound your returns on the equity that you've built. And I know there's various avenues, and I'm not one for saying just go borrow money, max yourself out. I definitely was maxed out a few times on a few things, and I was like, oh, is this going to work out, or is it? It's
stress coming.
Yeah. I think you can strategically, I'm a fan of communal living. Like, I'm like, why should I go buy a house for 500,000 and you go buy a house for 500,000 when collectively we can have $1 million house, still have the same space, but have 10 times the experience of the life that we got to live? Because if you're going to spend time in your home, why would you want to be at the bottom end of it if there's a way to be at the top end? I think another option is, depend on how you work, where you work and live, doing house swaps, I know you can swap around the world and it's like a point system. So depend if you have a place that people would want to come and stay. It's not Airbnb, it's straight house swapping. So you get to go live in their house for a couple of weeks. There are things that you can do around just using your own real estate to add to your life. As far as investment goes, for me, it was doing joint ventures. So that's really what got me ahead. It was like learning how the money worked around real estate. And again, through education, books, podcasts, and then finding a group of people that, we trusted each other, and then we went down that avenue and got ahead. So there was definite ways. And at one point I actually secured my own, well, even the fishing duck, I have like personal guarantees against this. So the partners would come in and joint venture with this business. So I'm the one that's guaranteed it. So you can use, the term I use is use what you've got to get what you want. But I don't mean go buy the dirt bike or the boat with like leverage it for that. I mean the lifestyle that you want. Think of times when you're, if you work away, is there someone else that lives local that works in a similar area? Can you do it where they're back for 2 weeks and live in your house and you're back for the 2 weeks? There are things and different. I mean, don't look for the standard, hey, let's just save up the deposit, go buy a house. There's going to be a transfer of wealth from the boomer generation to the next one down. I think it's going to be the largest transfer of wealth in history of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
With that coming, there's a lot of people are going to be inheriting a chunk of money. At that point, being like, okay, do I want to pay off the truck or do I want to buy an asset that can make the payment on the truck? Because this asset typically appreciates in value while this one depreciates. So don't pay off your truck, buy the house that's going to appreciate and use the money you make off that to pay for the truck. Because eventually, truck's paid off, but you still own the house that's gone up. And I think, the biggest thing would be education. Like I say, I've given that first book, start looking at podcasts, real estate. Don't dive in too soon. Don't do nothing.
Yeah.
Definitely, don't just 3 months. Yeah. I would say give yourself 3 to 6 months of knowledge and then go and start meeting people that have done it. And the reason I say get that knowledge first is because there's a lot of conversations that you'll go and potentially, I don't want to say waste people's time, but you'll have a better level of conversation. And a thing I'll use the analogy is, if I'm going to speak to a NASA scientist, if I was to walk to him today and start asking him questions, my ability to learn from him is less than if I spent 3 to 6 months learning about space and getting questions. Now I'm having a higher level of conversation. So his ability to pass on something of higher value is better. So that's where I would say you get that before you start asking questions. And there's networking events everywhere. There's a great group in Nanaimo, the Nanaimo Real Estate Group. If you're local to the island, there's probably, doesn't matter where you listen to this podcast, there will be somewhere, there'll be a little real estate meetup group. Just go there, sit and listen. Don't, over talk, and just hear what everyone's doing. And you'll pick up little bits of ideas, because the way someone else does something, you're like, wow, that's a great idea. I met a guy at one group and he was doing like basic farming in the houses, and that's how he was generating revenue and reducing his taxes. So he was increasing cash flow, and then he was using that cash flow to create the next little farm, even though it was on a residential property. So a genius idea. So things like, so educate, and then, definitely network, because that's going to create the most value around real estate. And then from that, start taking action, educate, network, and then take action steps. Because if you don't do anything ever, the square, it doesn't matter how many times you multiplying anything by 0 is 0.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. All right.
And be prepared to make mistakes, because we're all going to make them.
That's an understatement. I'm like, oh, yeah, I messed up many times, but that's the thing. But also surrounding yourself with the people who can help you through those mistakes is really important. Your network, like you said, is everything. It's, that can introduce you to someone that you maybe don't know right now.
Yeah.
Like for myself, I'm new to town. I know my family and my family only, but I know that my mother-in-law knows a lot of people, and I know that my sister-in-law knows a lot of people. So it's like, how can I educate them to be like, hey, I need referrals, or who do you know that I should help, And then I've been building my business over the last year in Port Alberni just on referrals. And I'm like, I love that, because then it's okay. I did the fall fair, but people are just getting to know my brand, and they're getting to know my face, and this is Alaina and she does good things. Right. And so now it's like, okay, well, if I can incorporate my own brand into helping people understand what I stand for, and helping people see what type of business owner I choose to be, and adding value with stuff like my podcast and my books, and just going into those kind of conversations a little bit differently now, because I've already,
The power of network you're on about. I was at a funeral, not a funeral, a celebration of life, and somebody was sitting next to me, and they were just on about a piece of property they had, commercial property. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll have a look at it. Wasn't something I was thinking about. And all of a sudden I was driving past, saw the person and thought, oh, I said I'd go see them. And so, value, I should be true. So I go back, I pull in, show her on the property, and I'm just doing math, being like, well, that space will run for that, that'll run for that. And I'm doing the math in my head, thinking like, hey, this could generate like $10,000 a month, realistically.
Right.
I went, how much do you want for it? And she was like, 500,000. And I was like,
Wow.
John, I didn't know how I was getting the money, but just having that network, I literally made about 7 phone calls and raised $500,000 in 24 hours. And we purchased the property. And then within another few months, we raised another 250 to do a load of rental work and stuff on that. And the building's probably worth about 1.3, 1.4 today, if not more. So, and that was just that, having the education knowledge to understand what things rent for and how you can do joint ventures, which all came from education, courses, books, and then having the network and then taking the action steps to put those two things together just created this opportunity. So I was like, yeah, within 24 hours, you just created something from nothing. So it is powerful network and knowledge, but you have to apply it.
Yeah. Creating something from nothing. I love that. That's such a good place to end.
Yeah.
I want people to get more access to you. So where can they find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so real estate side, we've got our YouTube channel, Revenue, REVNYOU. They can look up a lot of real estate stuff on there, and that's just very basic, how-tos. They can contact us through that website. People connect with me socially. If you've got any messages, any questions, anyone coming to, our town, the island, business type people, I'm open to have conversations with people as much as I can, except July and August, because that's when I'm busy at the resort. But outside of that, yeah, and I enjoy these types of conversations because from this, you learn, you grow, you hear what other people are doing. And I'm a firm believer that we can always join the dots. So, I'm aware of what you're doing. If I hear someone else talking about that, there's 2 dots I join, and I think you can create great community like that. So yeah, all social platforms and Revenue is our website. And if they want to come on a houseboat holiday, they can come out to the Fish and Duck and have a chat to me out here.
Yeah, I love that. Please do, because it is a absolutely incredible experience. My niece and nephew, we did it a couple of years ago, and they still talk about it. And they're like, can we go do that again?
Best lake in BC, just one.
So funny because Port Alberni's been voted like the worst place to live in Canada. And I'm like, I highly doubt that because it's amazing here.
Yeah, you got to look between the lines on that. I look at the things it was voted for. It's like, oh, you have lower wages, but you have lower house prices, and both are negative. And I'm like, but they're relative. Mm-hmm. So, because in England, Newcastle, where I'm from, got voted one of the best places to raise a family because the house prices were low in relation to the salaries, the percentage works. So I'm like, well, if it works here, why? To me, I think you can have more of a life here. As long as you're an outdoorsy person, this is one of the best places on the planet. And I've been to a few.
Yeah, I hear that. That's good. I love it. Okay, well, guys, this is a holistically grown show. So if you got value out of today's episode, which I know you did, I took a whole page of notes. I'm like just trying to write while I'm not like awkwardly staring at my page. But know that you can reach out to Gary anytime and get more access to his content. He's got a lot of experience in this space, as you can tell. So share the show. That's greatly appreciated. That's it for today. So
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been great. I enjoyed having this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That's us signing out.